of India are gathered the people of a vast nation, nearly a fifth world's population, seeking a better way of life. But untimely death is the fate of millions. Though they bathe in the sacred waters of the Ganges, the holy river cannot save them. It is muddy, polluted. The borders of India include deserts, mountains, and fertile valleys in an area half the size of the United States. 3/4 of the people live by working on the land. Their labor produces food for India and raw materials for export. In the north are the mist-shrouded peaks of the Himalayas. But north or south, India is a land of mystery and ancient customs. Monkeys have no fear of harm from anyone, for all animal life is sacred in this country where human life is cheap. Along the broad highways, elephants and strange processions mingle in the confusion of languages and religions. Political aspirations are rising. Unrest and turmoil abound, while near the bizarre shops of the narrow streets and in the heart of the city slums, sacred cows roam unmolested. Today, India is adopting Western ways in transportation, in dress, and in business. Our large cities are the centers of great industrial empires which demand their right to world trade. Yet, in spite of it, has 60 million untouchables, the outcasts. In South India, in a typical outcast village, a baby boy is born. His mother calls him Yesudas. Although she gives him the best care she knows, the unsanitary conditions and the lack of good food, the scarcity of medical doctors, all mean that Yesudas may be one of the millions of babies who die in India each year. Worst of all, Yesudas is an outcast. His grandmother sprinkles wet cow dung and clay in front of the house. This makes the ground hard and easier to clean. Inside the smoke-filled hut, 3 stones placed on the ground serve as a stove for the family. Here, Yesudas' mother prepares the meals in a clay pot. After a meager breakfast, the simple housework is done, and Mother winds a corner of her sari on top of her head in preparation for the day's labor. With Yesudas on her hip, she goes through the village to the fields. Women and children work long hours with the men at the pitiful wage of 5 cents a day. Soon Yesudas will join them, but now he sleeps nearby. While Yesudas is still a baby, his father dies, and in their poverty, Yesudas sometimes has only a bit of bread for food. Though still too young for school, Yesudas soon takes his place as a laborer of India, and later, at the age of 7, he is herding cattle on the farm of a rich landowner. By now, Yesudas is living with his uncle, who's one of the farm hands. His uncle uses the typical Indian plow made of a pointed wooden stick. Some of the fields are covered with stones. Here they scratch the surface of the ground with a crude harrow made of prongs attached to a flat wooden board. For long seasons of the year, the weather is very dry, and without water, the fields become baked and dusty. With irrigation, however, the soil of India can produce several crops annually, for the climate of much of the country is always warm. So in India, water is precious and labor is cheap. During the harvest season, women go out into the fields with their little sickles and reap the grain a few stalks at a time, as did Ruth and Naomi thousands of years ago. The sheaves are carried to the threshing floor, where the golden grain is beaten out of them. But still, there is not enough food for all, and most of the outcasts go to bed hungry each night. On the wealthier farms, the precious wheat is ground additional to India. A heavy stone wheel, rolled oxen in a well-worn groove, crushes the grain, while others add new kernels or scoop up the flour. The outcast women are not even allowed to use the village wells. The Hindus believe that their shadows would pollute the water, and any high-caste Hindu who touched it. They must use the outcast well, which is only a hole in the ground. It is filthy and spreads disease. When Yesudas is 8 years old, his uncle takes him to the holy fair. People come to the marketplace from miles around in carts, on foot, and on bicycles. Some, such as this woman, even come by measuring their length on the ground. As a special penance, she lies in the road, makes a mark in the dust, and then walks forward to the mark to begin again. Yesudas is fascinated by the snakes, which sway in rhythm to the music of the snake charmers. But the center of activity is the sacred pool, where men, women, and children bathe in the holy water. That is, all except the outcasts, who, according to the religious belief, are not worthy to mingle with those of caste or with the sacred cows. Since the water is holy, women use it to cook their rice. Outcasts pay to have holy water poured over them. As they cannot enter the temple, they also pay to have holy oil poured on the doorstep. Then they anoint their heads with the oil. The outcasts make no complaints. This is their lot, and they expect no more. They've been taught to believe that they are suffering in this life for the sins they committed in a previous existence, and there's no hope for them. Yesudas is glad to get away from the temple, back to the acrobats and whipping beggars who flock to the fair and perform their tricks to get a few coins from the crowd. About this time, a Christian preacher comes to the village, and his daughter teaches Yesudas to read and write. When the preacher opens a small school for outcast boys, Yesudas becomes a leader in his class. He helps other boys and girls learn their lessons. He also learns the story of Jesus, and at worship periods leads in prayer. To secure money for a wedding, his uncle decides to sell Yesudas and drags him off to the landlord. Since the uncle is an outcast, he stands at a distance and bargains with the landlord, who offers $15 for Yesudas. The uncle, like most of the people in India, cannot read, so his thumbs are inked and printed, and Yesudas is put in bondage for the next 8 years. Rather than submit to this slavery, Yesudas decides to escape as soon as he can. A few months later, Yesudas runs away to the mission school, where he is put in a class taught by a Christian Indian teacher. Unlike the outcast village, the mission school has a clean well which supplies pure water for drinking. It is the center of activity after school on hot, dry days. Saturday is wash day. The school educates the boys not only in reading and writing, but also gives them practical training in sanitation and cleanliness by having them do their own work. Yesudas is soon an expert in using the charcoal burning iron to press his one suit of shirt and trousers. After work is done, the boys have time for hockey, their favorite game. Win or lose, our shower feels good when the game is over. All the food at the mission school is prepared by the boys themselves, who are assigned regular duties. They make the round, flat chapatis, or Indian bread, out of wheat flour, and eat it while sitting on the ground. On Sunday, the boys go to church, and after several months, Yesudas decides to become a Christian. In his new happiness, he joins the church choir, for he loves to sing. A few years later, Yesudas receives a scholarship to the high school. For the first time, he mingles with high caste boys. In track meets, he competes with boys from homes of wealth and prestige. At the end of the year, when the points are counted and the championship trophies have been awarded, the star athlete is Yesudas the Outcast. A short distance from the boys' school is a mission high school for girls. Here, too, the outcasts are given a chance to obtain an education and to learn the gospel of Christ. Moya, one of the outcast girls, has found here a new friendliness and companionship. And athletics, too, help to give her freedom from ancient customs and restrictions. Moya becomes skillful at carding and spinning cotton. When she has the finished thread, she uses the school loom to weave her cloth. The girls prepare their own meals and sift flour for bread. In the classroom, Moya and the other girls study subjects similar to those taught in America, such as cooking, chemistry, and natural science. Both Yesudas and Moya attend the Summer Institute. Here, in the atmosphere of Christian study and fellowship, these two outcast young people first meet and then become deeply interested in each other. In one of the classes, Jacob, a young preacher, describes what he's doing for his people, how with a few medicines he treats the sick, the diseased, and the injured, and tells about Jesus who said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." How he gathers the villagers together to talk about the evils of child marriage, drink, and debt, and how eagerly they listen to his suggestions and begin to change customs which have been degrading them for centuries. These are the experiences Jacob tells the young people of the Institute. Inspired by Jacob's enthusiasm, the boys follow his example and go to an outcast village for a cleanup project. They bring along hose and brooms and baskets. They want to show the people what a clean village could be. Refuse and dirt are piled together. Most of the village is a dump heap where pigs range. A week later, the girls set out for the village to finish the job the boys began. The village women get into the spirit of cleaning, and they too take their brooms and begin to sweep. Moya brings the little children together to teach them a little game, for games are unknown to outcast children. Later at the Institute, during a worship service, Yesudas wonders if God is calling him. Moya is questioning too. Yesudas and Moya decide to dedicate their lives to the service of their fellow outcasts. A few months later, they graduate from high school, but they have not forgotten their prayer of dedication. After Yesudas and Moya are married, they arrive at their first parson home in the village where Yesudas was born. Poverty and indifference and centuries of rooted custom block them at every turn, but they do not give up. They begin to teach the villagers to read and write. The little children are sometimes difficult. Yesudas remembers when he was just like one of them. Smallpox comes as an annual epidemic, and Yesudas brings a nurse to the village to vaccinate the babies. Even high-caste women bring their babies to be vaccinated. The village well was still an unsanitary hole in the ground, so Yesudas secures government grants to build a new well. The villagers decide they must have a church. The walls will be made of mud. Women help by carrying the mortar, for all the village has a part in this project, while Christian friends in America, through their missionary offerings, are providing the tin roof. A few weeks later, their dedication of this new building is a day of triumph. As outcasts, they had been forbidden to enter the Hindu temple, so they themselves have built a house for the worship of God. They are no longer outcasts, they are Christians. The villagers clap their hands in time to the singing, for this is a day of freedom from age-long slavery. High-caste men wonder what has happened, but if they enter the church, they would soon know, for in the beautiful service, Yesudas tells the story of the love of God for his children. The heathen shrines are neglected as people learn about Christ. Children play among the dread idols, once powerful, now crumbling into dust. People come from far and near to hear the story of Jesus, to learn about this Christian faith which has transformed the village. All receive a new hope in the gospel of Christ, because a mission school touched the life of Yesudas, the outcast.